Well, let's get to a top 40 extra on this fancy playlist. There are so many of them, so many of them I want to get to. This side right here, these are the songs that I added that week. These are the ads on this fancy playlist. There are like about 10 records I think I added. Some of them you probably recognize. Hero by Mariah Carey, that would go to, well, top 5 for her. Lemon by U2. Go by Pearl Jam. I forgot about that. May have to talk about that one later on. Tevin Campbell, Can We Talk? That was a pretty big R&B pop hit. Bonnie and Clyde theme by Yo-Yo. Female rapper. Tony Braxton, Breathe Again. Matthew Sweet, Phil Collins, Both Sides of the Story. And Moby. I forgot about this techno tune by Moby called Move. Penciled it in at the bottom of the ads on this fancy playlist. Just listened to it on YouTube a few minutes ago. Boy, he put out some great dance. I don't, well, not all of it's not necessarily danceable, but just that great ambient electronic music, whatever you want to call it. He was one of the premier electronic producers, DJs back in the early 90s. Although he had some pop crossovers by the early 2000s, some of his videos by the early 2000s getting airplay on MTV and VH1 video outlet channels here in the States. Moby's from Connecticut. His real name, Richard Melville Hall. His his great great granduncle was Herman Melville, the guy who wrote Moby Dick. Thus the nickname Moby. When he was in high school, he played in he played in a hardcore punk band called the Fanagan Commandos. Boy, that's a very aggressive sounding name. You know, these, if you call yourself the Fanagan Commandos, you know you mean business, some big time rock and roll business. Later sang in a group called Flipper, and he sang lead with that group while the lead singer was in jail. He went to college for it a little while, but he got the DJ bug. He went to New York City, started DJing, and started putting out EPs and independent singles. It started independent record label called Instinct. And his debut single was going to be called Mobility. His debut, Mobility, that was the A side. But it was the B side called Go that became a massive British hit on their singles charts in 1991, went top 10 in England. Go by Moby, and that put him on the map big time. He was invited, that people were coming up to him, would you like to remix my record? Indeed, he was remixing records by Orbital. Remember Orbital? They came out with a tune later on in the 90s called The Box. I think it was called The Box. There was he remixed stuff by the Pet Shop Boys, Brian Eno. Who else did? Michael Jackson, Depeche Mode. Guy was moving on up, playing in raves. He was doing parties and raves in the early 90s and released his first album in 1992, self-titled, called Moby. But he wasn't involved in the release of his first album. That was his record label that just put it out, just took some of his older material about a year old on up, and put it into this album. 1992 or 93, Moby. Oh God, let me get my notes on this because this blew me away. He put out, it was a double A single. I forgot the name of one of the singles, but the other single was called Thousand, and literally, no, it was called I Feel It. The track was called I Feel It. It was 1,000 beats per minute. Made the Guinness Book of World Records, 1,000 beats per minute. When I was working as a DJ in a nightclub, I think the fastest record I ever played, I think it was like Neutron Dance by the Pointer Sisters. Maybe it was over 200 beats per minute. But this record, I think the record was called Thousand. I Feel It was one side and Thousand was the other side. 1,000 beats per minute. That is fast. Signed a deal with Mute Records in England. Xtra here in the States put out a 6-song EP called Move, and there you have it. Later on, he came came bigger actually later on. He redid the James Bond theme, which was killer, absolute killer, in 1997. Then it was Play in 1999. Remember watching the video to Porcelain, the beautiful porcelain, that beautiful synthesizer, that sunrise, that clean sheen, that synthesizer. It was Porcelain around the spring of 2000, and there was Natural Blues later on in 2000, and We Were All Made of Stars. He came out with that one in 2002. But let's go back to this joint back in 1993. An ad on my fancy playlist, October 17th, 1993. This is Moby, an early tune by Moby called Move.